friend from Michigan.
Senator from Arizona.
I thank him for his leadership of the Armed Services Committee. Madam President, the train's about to leave the station on the last of the appropriations bills for 2010, and unfortunately, nothing has changed. Everything's the same. Earmarking, pork barrel, excessive and unnecessary spending, billions in wasteful earmarks have again found their way into this bill, which could otherwise be spent for the priorities that our men and women, our military leaders, as well as the Secretary of Defense has asked for. There's in this one, here we go again, appropriation bill loaded up with earmarks, 523-page explanatory statement for 1,720 earmarks, totaling $4.3 billion. So let's do some simple math here. $4.3 billion in pork, $2.5 billion in unauthorized and unrequested C-17s, $500 million in unrequested and unwanted funding for the Joint Strike Fighter Alternative Engine and Presidential Helicopter. That's $7.3 billion that the military nor do the Defense Department request and doesn't need. $7.3 billion. Now, some people will say, that's not a lot of money. Well, it's enough to keep the state of Arizona's budget requirements fulfilled for 10 months. States across America are facing great difficulties, as we know, and an additional $7.3 billion would not be so bad. And I want to say again, this process of earmarking breeds corruption. That's why we have former members of Congress in federal prison. It wasn't inadequate disclosure requirements that led Duke Cunningham to violate his oath of office and take $2.5 million in bribes in exchange for doling out $70 to $80 million of the taxpayers' funds to a defense contractor. Was his ability to freely earmark taxpayer funds without question. And I want to point out again, the president pledged during the campaign that he would work to eliminate earmarks. The president last March, when we had an omnibus spending bill, said they wouldn't do it anymore. In September, the president spoke in Phoenix, Arizona to the veterans of foreign wars. In that speech, the president's words were quite compelling about waste and pork barrel spending in defense bills. In that speech, the president promised to end to, quote, special interests and their exotic projects, and reaffirmed that he was leading the charge to kill off programs like the F-22, the second engine for the Joint Strike Fighter, and the outrageously expensive presidential helicopter. The president went on to say, quote, if a project doesn't support our troops, we will not fund it. If a system doesn't perform well, we will terminate it. And if Congress sends me a bill loaded with that kind of waste, I will veto it. We will do right by our troops and taxpayers. Well, Mr. President, I can tell you, the President of the United States, that meets your criteria with over $7 billion of unnecessary, unwanted spending. Will the President veto this bill? Not a chance. Not a chance. But the American people are going to demand that this obscene process stop. The American people are going to demand that we stop wasting $7 billion of their tax dollars in wasteful and earmark spending. And I am confident that they are aware. They're aware that we're spending $7.6 million to fund research in Montana on hypersonic wind tunnels called Mariah. This self-licking ice cream cone has been with us earmarked and unrequested since 1998. The Air Force lost interest in 2004, so the appropriators moved it to the Army. The Army has no requirement for this capability and published a report in 2005 stating their disinterest in the program. In summary, we spent $70 million for some hypersonic wind tunnel that nobody wants. $70 million. And unless we demand and receive change, there'll be more millions in it next year. $5 million to the battleship USS Missouri Memorial Association. $18 million, $18.9 million for a center at the University of Massachusetts, quote, dedicating to educating the general public, students, teachers, new senators, and Senate staff about the role and importance of the Senate. What does that have to do with defending this nation? What does that have to do with providing the men and women who are risking their lives as we speak with the equipment that they need? $18.9 million to educate the public about the importance of the Senate? Give me a break. $9.5 million to the University of Hawaii for a program called the Panoramic Survey Telescope and Raid Response System. The list goes on and on. But the Air Force is paying for this, and the Air Force won't be allowed to be getting much in return, since it will only be allowed to use the telescope 5% of the time. In other words, in dollar figures, the Air Force pays $10 million to the university and receives $500,000 in return. What's more, the Air Force has not, in the 9-year life of this earmark, requested a single dollar for this program. Since 2001, the Air Force has been forced to spend more than $75 million of its budget allocation on a program it doesn't want. Madam President, I'd ask unanimous consent to have these other pork barrel earmark programs, such as $1.2 million for American Museum of Natural History Infectious Disease Research, into the record at this time.
Without objection.
So the list goes on and on. So $2 million for the Cedars-Sinai Medical Center's operating room of the future in Los Angeles, California. That's the second earmark I've seen. The other one was from irritable bowel syndrome. Now we have an operating room of the future. Remarkable. $2.3 million for marine species, $2 million for a marine mammal detection system. There's a threat. $2.4 million for marine mammal awareness alert and response system. The list goes on and on. I know that my time is near to expire. So here we are with a deficit of $1.4 trillion for this year, a debt of over $12 trillion, unemployment at 10%. 900,000 families lost their homes in 2008, and we're spending $7 billion, over $7 billion on earmarked pork barrel project that the Department of Defense neither needs nor want. And there are programs which are not fully funded because of this that are vital to defending the lives of the men and women who are serving in the military. Again, this appropriations bill is a disgrace. Madam President, I yield the floor.
Madam President.
The senator from Massachusetts.
I thank the chair. Madam President, I rise to speak for something else.